Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Kesubos Daf Yud. We are holding 7 lines from the top of the Amud. Okay, let's pick the topic up again, the Ksuba payments. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, Hoilu Knas Chachamim Hu. Since the entire payment that a husband pays his wife upon divorce, upon death, is only midrabanon, it's a knas chachamim, a penalty imposed by the chachamim upon the man. Therefore, there is a kula, there is a leniency involved. Lo tigbe elo min haziburos. So, although the isha is entitled to the full amount, but from where? Where does she get it from? Min haziburos, lowest quality assets. There's a choice between a higher quality property or lower quality. She will get the lower quality field, although she gets the same amount at the end of the day, but it's from a lower quality source. Asks the Gemara, what do you mean knosa? It's a penalty. My knosa? What? Why? Who's being penalized here? It's just a regular, standard monetary obligation between husband and wife. Ela ema, rather, the correct wording should be as follows. Hoil v'takonas chachamim hu, since this entire payment obligation was established by the Chachamim, it's not min haTorah, it's midrabanan. Therefore, lo tigbe ella min haziburis, she is only entitled to collect that from the worst of his assets. And the Gemara in Gittin elaborates further. We know that an isha is more inclined, more motivated to marry more than the man, and therefore the Chachamim, in order to encourage the men to marry, to motivate them, they sort of lowered their obligation. You have to pay up, but you can give it from the lowest quality field that you possess. Okay, so that's the Tanakama, that the Ksuba obligation, whatever amount that he has to pay, 100, 200, as we're going to see later on in the upcoming Daf, it's only with Rabbanon. Whereas Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he disagrees. Ksubas isha min haTorah. The Torah mandates, the Torah obligates this payment. Where? Soon the Gemara will bring a pasuk. Asks the Gemara, is that so? Umi Amar, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Hachi. Is that so? That he holds that it's min haTorah about Tanya. Listen to this brisa. Kesef yishkel, k'moyer habasulas. So this fellow seduced an isha, he convinced an isha to interact with him physically. Pasuk says he has to pay up. Kesef yishkoil, and we compare it to something else. Ke moyar habasulois, a reference to the oines, a fellow who forced an isha to interact with him. Just as there is an obligation to pay up over there, likewise the mefata has to pay as well. So the mefata, the fellow who convinced her, has to pay just like an oines, a fellow who forced an isha, would have to pay. What's the point of comparing one case to the other? We connect the two and we derive halachas from one to the other. Shehezeh, that the mefata will have a similar obligation like the oines, kimoyar habasulois. Rashi explains, just like over there it's 50 coins, over here as well it's 50 coins. And likewise, we connect it in the reverse as well. Umoyar habasulois, the oines will be kazeh, like the mefata, just like the mefata pays shekalim, a high quality, high value coin, kesef yishkol, right? The payment executed by the oines will also entail shekalim. Furthermore, the fact that the pasuk makes a reference to something called moyar habasulois, psulim payment. What is that? That's the standard ksuba payout from a husband to his wife. Mikan samcha chachamim, based on this pasuk, the chachamim found a support, a basis, l'ksubas isha min haTorah, to the entire concept of ksuba payout. It's rooted in this pasuk, and therefore it's considered a chiyuv min haTorah. So when a person divorces, the payment that he gives is sourced in the Torah. It's moyer habsulois, it's psulim payments. That's the Tanakama. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he disagrees. He says it's not min haTorah. Ksubas isha eina midivrei Torah. Rather, Ella, it's midrabanan midivrei seifrim. What do you mean? Earlier, the same man the Amar, Rabban Shimon Gamliel, tells us that it is min haTorah. Eifach, we have to switch around the names in the most recent brisa. Instead of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is saying it's min Rabbanon, he actually holds it's min Torah, which makes it consistent with the earlier view, with the Shimon's view mentioned earlier. Asks the Gemara, how do you know which way to go? You have to switch something around due to this contradiction. Why do you insist? Why do you prefer to switch this one, the Afchas Basraisa, to reverse the most recent Braisa, Eifach Kamaisa, rather than reversing the earlier Braisa? Maybe Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel actually holds that min Rabbanon. Answers the Gemara, no, because we actually know from elsewhere. It's already been established that his personal opinion is that Kesubos is min Torah. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel the Amar. We already know that he holds Kesubos Isha is midoraisa. How do we know this? Not listen to this Mishnah. So it's a Mishnah in our Masechta that, let's say he marries an Isha in one land and divorces her in a different land. What type of coins does he have to give her? Current, local currency, or based on where he married? So there's a whole shaila in the Mishnah, and the Tanakama holds that we always go lekula. He has to give her the least amount. Rabban Shimon Gamliel disagrees. He says, look, if you married her in a place called Kaputkia, which has large size coins, so he obligated himself in those coins, right? The shibud, the obligation, pertains to that type of currency, and this is based on the halacha that ksuba is minat Torah. The Gemara later discusses this in great length. So it's clear that according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the chi of ksuba is minat Torah, and that's the basis for this halacha. Rabban Shimon Gamliel he has to give her the higher currency. So it's pretty obvious that he holds that ksuba is minat Torah, and that prompts us to, when we have a shaila between the two brises, we reverse the names in a way that it will fit, it will be consistent with his personal shita that ksuba is minat Torah. Another approach can be, we seem to have a contradiction between Rabban Shimon Gamliel and Brisa number 1 that ksuba is minat Torah, and in Brisa number 2 he seems to say it's min Rabbanon. We can go ahead and fix it up as follows. Kula Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Really, the entire second Brisa was dictated and presented by the same Mandama, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. There is no machlekes, and the Brisa is meant to be read as follows. Meant to learn it as though it's missing some words. The Tanoim would present their brises in brief, concise format, and we're meant to sort of insert some elaboration into the brise. And we're meant to learn it as follows. Brisa began with that pasuk, right? And the Brisa elaborated on that. And this serves as a source for Kesubos Isha minat Torah, provided she's a besula, right? Let's keep in mind which words in that pasuk were indicative of the chi of ksuba. Kemoyhar ha-besulos. It's payment for the besulim. That only pertains to a besula. So the ksuba payment given to a besula, that's minat Torah. However, ksubas almana, an isha who it's her second time around, she's no longer a besula. That obligation is no longer minat Torah. Eina medivrei Torah, ela medivrei seifrim. That was introduced by the Chachamim. That's the opening halacha in the Brisa. And then the Brisa continues. She, right? That's a key letter. She, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. It's not Rabban Shimon. It's not. He's not arguing. It's one continuous discussion because he said, because She, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Kesubos almana eina medivrei Torah el medivrei seifrim. Although ksuba for a besula is minat Torah, but the ksuba for an almana is only midrabanan. So bottom line is, Kesubos almana all agrees midrabanan. It's no longer moyer abesulas. What about the ksuba for a besula? That's a machlekes tanai. Okay, now let's go back to that topic we had yesterday. This fellow interacted with his new wife, did not find any dam, and started questioning her besulim status. The Gemara will bring us several stories and many variations of this type of complicated situation. Hahuda asal kameder Rav Nachman. So this new husband approaches Rav Nachman. Amalei tells him, "Look, I'm in trouble. Pesach pasuach matzasi. I discovered an open channel. She did not appear to present as a besula." Amalei, or there's a gersa Amar lahu, Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman turns to his to his talmidim, to his helpers. Asvuhu, you should strike this fellow, hit him, kufri, with palm branches. He deserves to get punished. Oh, why is he such an expert in whether it's open or closed? Where did he get that expertise from? Mavrachta chavitale. The immoral women in this town, Mavrachta, are lying next to him. He's an experienced fellow. Otherwise, how does he have such insight? How does he know what goes on? So he wasn't too pleased with this fellow. Asks the Gemara, what do you mean? Let's just go back up to the top of our daf, the first line. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, right? If a fellow claims Pesach Basuach, she's not a Besula, we believe him. And here he's hitting him. What's going on? Well, both are true. We hit him and we believe him. Mehemen, umasbinu lekufri. We hit him because we believe him, right? So he's trusted, right? He claims she's not a Besula. Okay, we take it as fact, but we're not too pleased with his insight and expertise. That's one teretz. Rav Achai Meshani. Rav Achai answers, well, it depends on his on his status. Kan bebacher. If he was never married, in that case, we strike him, we hit him, and we don't believe him. Because what do you know about these things? Kan ben nasui. But if he was already, previously married, then he has prior experience, then he can be trusted, and there's nothing wrong with him. Hahuda asal kameder Rabbi Gamliel. Another fellow came to Rabbi Gamliel with the same complaint. Amalei Pesach Basuach Matzas. Look, I discovered an open channel. What should I do? Amalei. So Rabbi Gamliel tells him, you know what? It's not really conclusive. You never know. Maybe you slid right by the psulim and you missed it. Shema hitisa. Maybe you slanted on the way in and you didn't encounter the psulim. You never know. You have to really confirm your suspicion before you get all concerned. And I'll explain to you with a mashal. Mashal. Let me give you an analogy. What does it compare to? This fellow was walking on a pitch black night, and he approaches the door and he's groping for the opening, trying to get it open. And he's banging and it just doesn't open. So hita matzeh pesuach. If he leans in the right direction, leans sort of to the side of the door and pushes it in on an angle, then the door would open. Lo hita, but if he strikes directly at the door, it's not going to open. Lo hita matzeh, no, then it's locked and closed. It won't open. Likewise over here, it's compared to the darkness of night. You never know how which angle was actualized. Maybe you slid right by it, off to the side, and you missed the psulim, and that's why there was no sensation of closure. So it's not necessarily a concern. Ikad Amri, Hachi Amrle. There's another version of his response to this fellow. It's unlikely that he would have just sidestepped the psulim, without intending to do so. That's unlikely, but perhaps he actually uprooted the psulim in his haste and in his force. Shema b'mezid, he tisa v'akarta, l'dosha v'abra. Maybe it was b'mezid, meaning not necessarily you were intending to make trouble, but perhaps due to your excessive, force or pressure, you inadvertently, did it on an angle. He tisa v'akarta l'dosha v'abra, and you uprooted, you pulled out the entire, dislodged, so to speak. You dislodged the entire dashas, the door, the ibra, and the bolt, the whole entire doorway. It's just a mashal. I mean, the entire basula membrane was totally dislodged and uprooted, and you never really, disrupted it. You never really punctured it, so there's no dam. And This as well, he described him with a mashal. Amshalach mashal. What does it compare to? This fellow is groping in the darkness, approaches the door. So if he leans in and he reaches over to the door forcefully, Rashi says, he forces his way into the house, that will inevitably just force the door open. But if it's not done forcefully, and he's stuck on the other side of the door, he can't open. So here as well, perhaps there was a koyach and a miskaven and a bang and a pressure, which actually totally shoved away the psulim, and therefore no indication of dam was present. This fellow approaches Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi. He tells him, Rabbi, look, I interacted with any dam. What should I do? So he turned to the Isha. And the Isha turns to Rabbi Gamliel, and she says, look, Rabbi, I'll tell you the truth. Besula hayisi. I'm telling you, I promise, I was a besula. Nothing wrong with me. Amr lahem. So now he was in a quandary. And a dilemma, what should I do? He's claiming no dam, which raises suspicions of her perhaps not being a besula. She claims otherwise. Amr lahem, so he was a chacham. He says to him, look, let me see for myself. First hand. Could you hand me the cloth used to that was applied to the area after the interaction, which would prove whether or not there was any dam besulim present, right? So for the time being, they didn't find any dam on the sudar. Okay, let me see. They presented him with the sudar. And what did he do? He was concerned. He suspected that perhaps there were maybe some slight traces of dam, which were perhaps covered by the zera, whatever. So he figured, let me just remove the upper layer and discover what's beneath it. He soaked it in water, thereby, cleaning it. And in fact, he discovers several traces, several drops of dam, and he's all excited. He says, look to the man. Amrle tells the chassan, Leich, go and be zeichen, go take your acquisition. You're okay, you're safe. She was a besula. Amar lei, huna mabre the Rav and Prazike tells Rav Ashi, and nami us, by us as well. In Bavel ne'avad hachi, why don't we follow this method? Isn't this a beautiful, effective formula to discern any traces of dam stuck inside the beged? Amar lei, he says, by us it won't work. Giyutz shalonu. In Bavel they had a different manner of laundering. Giyutz, Rashi says, is a scraping process using an evanas chuch, some sort of rough, some sort of piece of glass, which was used to scrape the laundry and remove any stains. Only by way of using this excessive method, this powerful procedure, would we accomplish the same as they did, the kikiba shalem, when they simply rinsed. So they had a more effective way of rinsing and washing, and we can only get to that result through giyutz. And therefore it's impractical, because if you want to really get to the bottom of this cloth, to really cleanse the stains, to get to the essence and see what's behind it, you have to really do an effective kibus like they do, which we cannot. And to use this giyutz will be counterproductive. If we do giyutz and scrape the beged, you've defeated the purpose. So the scraping will be ma'abra, will remove any traces of dam as well. You'll be left with nothing, just a piece of cloth. So this is not really a solution in our side of the field. This fellow comes to Rabbi Gamliel with a problem. Gamliel barim. Amalei, he says, Rabbi, dam. Look, I found no dam. Amalei, so the Isha turns to the Chacham, Rabbi, I'll tell you the truth. Hadayin besula ani. He never really disrupted my besulam. I'm still a besula. That's why there was no dam. That's the answer to his question. So now Rabbi Gamliel had to, figure out whether in fact she's a besula. So he came up with a method. He says we can figure it out as follows. Amar lahen, he tells him, bring me two maidservants. Achas besula. One was known to still be a besula. va'achas be'ula, and one was known to be otherwise. Hevi Eloi, so they presented the two shifchos, and he did as follows. He used them for an experiment. V'yishivan al pi chavish al yain, and sat them down on top of an open barrel of wine. And this would be indicative of their status. Be'ula, the shifcha, who was confirmed to be a be'ula, reicha noidef, her breath would exude a slight trace of wine. Somehow the wine would enter her body beneath and come through the guf and would be discernible through her breath. As opposed to the basula, who is actually closed up on bottom, ein reicha noidef would not present this symptom. So this was a test to figure out whether the isha is a basula or be'ula. And now that he confirmed that this test indeed is effective, he used it on the isha to figure out her status. Avzu, likewise, this isha, who had a question mark, Shiva, he placed her on the barrel, and guess what? No smell. Confirmed basula. Amar loy, Rabbi Gamliel turns to the husband. He says, go ahead. You're good to go. Leich. Go ahead. Take your wife. You're safe. You're good. She's a basula. Next time, do it right, and you'll find out. Asks the Gemara, why do you have to go through this whole process with the two shifchos? Why couldn't he apply the same litmus test to the isha herself and see whether she's a basula or be'ula? Answers the Gemara. Gemara hava shmiele. He had a tradition that this experiment can be used to determine status, but he never actually did it. He didn't have personal experience. He never saw it firsthand. He didn't want to take a chance to perhaps risk shaming, embarrassing, humiliating the Bas Yisrael. He figured, maybe I'm not really going to be I'm not an expert in this method. It's not appropriate to shame, to degrade a Bas Yisrael. So first he confirmed that as an effective method, and then once he had it confirmed, he took the liberty to apply it to the isha for her sake, for her benefit. This fellow approaches Rabbi Gamliel with the same problem. Rabbi, I found no dam. Amar Loi, so the isha responds, Rabbi, I'll tell you why. In my family there is no dam. I hail from the Durkati family. There's no dam in our family, not this type and not that type. Badak Rabbi Gamliel b'krei. In fact, Rabbi Gamliel investigated. He asked the relatives, and they confirmed and confirmed her words. Amar Loi. So Rabbi Gamliel turns to the lucky husband. He says, Leich, go take home your wife. Ashrecha, fortunate are you, you are zeicha to the special wife. Mishpachas Durkati, to an isha from this unique family. My Durkati, why they call Durkati? It stands for two words, Doir Katua, a limited generation, meaning they have very few kids, because as the Gemara soon will tell us, dam, nida, dam, all that is synonymous with childbearing. Less dam, the less chance of childbearing. So that's why it's called Durkati. Amar Rabbi Chanina, although Rabbi Gamliel, it sounded like he praised this woman. You're so lucky that you got the woman from this family. But really, it was just to console him. It was just to put him at ease. Tanchumim shel hevel, an empty consolation. Nichamai Rabbi Gamliel Loisa Ish was expressed by Rabbi Gamliel to this fellow, because really, an isha is meant to have dam, and that's indicative of proper health and proper childbearing abilities. The Tani Rabbi Chia Keshem Shasoir Yafal Isa, just like soir, sourdough, is very beneficial to your dough. It makes it rise and develop properly. So although it's sour, not really so tasty, but it's good for the dough. Kach damim yafim leisha. Likewise, dam nida, in as much as it's inconvenient and gets in the way, but it is helpful for the isha. It's indicative of her properly functioning system, which facilitates childbearing. Vitana mishum Rabbi Meir. In fact, Rabbi Meir adds, "Kol isha shadameh meruban isha who has lots of dam, but Merubim, that's indicative of her health in respect to childbearing abilities, and she has more chance to have more children. Itma Rabbi Yehuda bar Abba Amar. There were actually two versions of what Rabbi Gamliel tells him. Which words did he use? Either zechei b'mikchacha amarle. So he told him zechei b'mikchacha. You're lucky. This is great for you. For Rabbi Yisrael Abba Amar, actually he said nischayev b'mikchacha amarle. He told him, it's yours. That's it. You're stuck with it. Meaning, he didn't use the word zechei b'mikchacha. Rather, nischayev b'mikchacha. She's yours. Take her home. Why this difference? Amarle, that's what he told him. Now, Bishleim Elamanda Amar Neschayev, we understand the version of Neschayev, because lack of dam is actually indication of deficiency. Hainu Rabbi Chanina, right? Rabbi Chanina tells us that dam is actually a positive element. So that's why he said Neschayev, look, she's yours, take her home, you have no claim. But he didn't add, a lashon of zechus. Neschayev, she's yours. But how do we explain the other nusach? Why did he say zechei, which sounds like he's lucky? My zechusa, what's so great about an isha without dam? The answer is because he'll never come to any questions regarding the isser nida, because there is no dam in the picture to begin with. Finally, says the Gemara, there's another story where there was no dam. Yehuda Asal came to Rebbe. A fellow comes to Rebbe. Amarle, he tells him, Rebbe, ba'alti, v'loy matzasi dam. I interacted, did not discover dam. What should I do? Amarle, so the Isha turns to the Chacham, Rebbe, adayin besula. Ani, I'm still a besula. So lack of dam is not indicative of anything. I'm still a besula. Ushnei b'tzera sava. And the reason there is no dam is because, look, we're right in the middle of a famine, and there's very little dam, and that's why the body didn't respond the way it normally responds. Perhaps the basulim shriveled, etc. So there's no dam to be seen. In fact, Rebbe notices shepaneim shcherim, both the man and the woman's face were blackened from famine. Tziva, from hunger, Tziva aleim, she instructed his people, V'chnisam lamerchas, they took them into the merchas, they bathed them, V'chilam v'ishkim, gave them to eat and to drink, and got them back in shape, V'chnisam lached, they put them into a room, Baal matzadam, this time he found the dam. Right? It was there all along, but their condition, their desperate condition did not allow for it. Amar loy, so now Rebbe excitedly tells him, Leich zechei v'mikchecha, okay, go home, happy and lucky. Kari Rebbe Aleim, Rebbe applied the pasuk on these fellows. The pasuk in Eicha describing the results, the results of hunger and famine. Safad Oirem al Atzmam, their skin, their flesh dried on their bones. Yavish Hayake, dry like a piece of wood. So he attributed the lack of basulim to the hunger. And in fact, as soon as he rectified that situation, everything went back to normal. Continues the Mishnah. Besula ksubasa masai, b'mona mona. An isha who married as a besula, she's entitled to 200 zuz upon divorce or death. That is the ksuba payment in her case. But an almana, an isha who this is her second time around, and she's not a besula any longer, she only gets a mana. A mana means 100 zuz. Now, when we say a besula is entitled to 200, it doesn't matter if this is her first marriage or second. How could it be her second marriage and she's still a besula? Very simple. She's an almana, a grusha, a vechalutza, a widower, a divorcee. She went through chalitza, but she was only mina erison. She was only engaged to that first husband. In which case her besulim is still intact. In all those cases, ksubas or masayim, her second time around, she still gets 200 because she's still a besula. V'yesh tanas besulim. In all these cases, the second husband does not discover besulim. He comes running to Bez and look, you misled me, because he expects her to be a besula. My almana. Why is an isha called an almana? Amar Rav Chana Bagdis from Baghdad. Almana is al shem mana because she only gets 100. So that's why she's called almana. Asks the Gemara, well, that explains when she gets 100. What about an almana mina erisin? She was widowed from engagement, in which case she's still a basula and entitled to 200. Why is she called almana? Ma'ikala meimar. Why is she almana? I did the karli almana, just like the other one is called an almana. Hanami karli almana. Here as well we call her an almana, but technically she isn't. Asks the Gemara. Fine. You explained why the Mishnah calls her an almana, al shem mana. What about almana de ksiva b'iraisa? Ma'ikala meimar. We find the lashon almana in the Torah. Why does the Torah call her an almana? Let's remember, the ksuba payments issued to an almana is certainly only midrabanan. So why would the Torah call her an almana? Al shem the mana. That's not min Torah. Answers the Gemara. The Torah knew. The asidin rabbanan, because in the future the chachamim will establish the me'asaknin lo mana, will give her a mana. Hence, the Torah's reference to the isha as an almana. Umi kasav krola asid. Is that so that the Torah would make reference to something out in the future? Yes, we find it elsewhere as well, the chsiv. When it comes to geographical locations and future cities. V'shem hanor ashlishi chidekel. In Bereshis, the 4 rivers, right? The 3rd river, chidekel, hu ha'oilech kidmas Asher. It travels to the east of Asher. What is Asher? Asher was not yet built at that time. V'tanor of Yosef. What is Asher? Zu Salika. Salika was not yet built. Umi havoy was Salika around at that time. Elodah Sida. It was going to be in the future. And the Torah makes reference to it. Hachanami Dasida, likewise the Almana, was established later by the Chacham, Al Shem Mana. The Torah already refers to it with that name. Okay, so we have Dvar Agoda from Rav Chana Bar Gdasa, who is sort of darshaning words. So we're going to have a list of similar ideas. V'amar Rav Chana Bar Gdasa. Motar, what does rain do? It has a quintuple effect. Mashke, it waters. Marve, it saturates. Umazabel, it fertilizes. Uma'aden, and it enhances the glow of the produce. Umamshich, and it actually brings out. It causes the produce to grow. Amar Rava bar Rabbi Shmuel, v'tema, some say Rabbi Yehuda bar Shlami. Ma'ikra, where do we find all 5 functions in a pasuk? To lomer, Ravi, Naches, Gedudea, Berevivim, Tmagigeno, Tzimcha Devarach. Rashi explains. Ravi is going on the first 2 items. It waters and it saturates. The word Tmagigeno is a reference to fertilizing. And Tzimcha, Tevarech, is a reference to the actual direct effect it has on the fruit, on the produce. It's ma'adein and it's mamshech. Amar Belazar, on the topic of darshaning words, we have the word mizbeach. Mizbeach refers to the following 4 functions provided by the mizbeach. Miziach, it removes one's averis. Umezin, Rashi explains, b'schus the karbonis. The entire world gets its sustenance. Mechavev, it endears Klal Yisrael to Hashem. Mechaper, it atones for the averis. Isn't this redundant? Hainu mechaper, hainu meziach. Mechaper and meziach sound like one and the same concept. Removal, cleansing of the averis. Answer: meziach means the gzerus. It removes the gzerus. Umechaper means the avoinos. V'amar Rav Chana bar Gdasa, Tamri, dates are so great. They're great all around. Mishachnon, eating grapes, eating dates, it warms a person. Mishachnon, they warm the person, which aids in digestion. Misavan, they're satiating. Mishalshlon, they loosen one's digestive system, which is beneficial. Ma'ashron, they strengthen a person's constitution. V'lo mefankan, they don't make him finicky. Typically, when one eats sweets, he loses an appetite, but this doesn't affect one's appetite. Amar Rav, ochal tmarim al yore. When one eats dates, at that point, his mind gets slightly dazed. He shouldn't involve himself in paskening a halacha. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Tmarim, eating dates, well, it depends when you eat them. Shachris v'arvis yofnis. Eating them in the morning, eating them at night, after your meal, as a dessert, it's great. B'mincha rois. But towards evening, prior to dinner, that's not good. But tzarayim, right, middle of the day, after lunch, ein kamoisen, there's no better time than that. Umevatleis shloisha dvarim. And dates cancel three things. They address three concerns. Machshava ra. They oppose any negative thoughts. They put a person's mind in a positive, a positive frame of mind, positive disposition. It opposes, it addresses any digestive concerns. And help a person avoid hemorrhoids. Bottom line is, it seems like dates are great and they generate machshavos tovos. So why does Rav say, after eating dates, don't get involved in paskening because you're all dazed? Answers the Gemara, that's not a contradiction. Did we then say that dates aren't beneficial and great to a person's frame of mind? Certainly they're great. They help a person think straight, but temporarily speaking, lifishata, tarda, has an immediate dizzying effect. Sure, in the long term it's great, but immediately after eating those dates, a person has to take a little break to clear his mind. Just like wine, right? Wine's great, but it generates, a dizziness for the moment. When one drinks a revius of wine, he shouldn't be involved in a din Torah. So the wine's great, but it has a dizzying effect. Another terrace would be, it depends on the timing. Like Kasha, the answer is hama kama nahama. Dates eaten before bread, before the actual main dish. That's a problem. Hala basar nahama, after bread, after your meal, as a dessert, nothing better than that. Damar Abaye, as Abaye tells us, Amrli my adoptive mother tells me, Tamri, eating dates, well, depends where you place it. Mekama nahama, before bread, ki nargala dekula, it's terrible, it's like an axe going into a palm tree. Basar nahama, after bread, ki ibra ladasha, it's like the bolt fastening the door. It's a perfect conclusion to one's meal. Once we're on the topic of darshaning words, what does the word dasha mean? Dasha means a door. How did it get the word dasha? Amarava derech sham. Dasha means you go through there. What about the word darga, a staircase, a ladder? Amarava derech gag. Darga means this is the way up to the roof. Puria, where did it get its name from? Puria is a bed. Amrapapa sheparan v'rabban alea, because we multiply, generate children on top of it. Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, af anonaymar. We'll also jump into this and add something to the list. Islandness. Where do we get the word islandness from? An isha who can't bear children. Why islandness? It's a ram. Duchronis. It's lashon of isle. It's a ram, right? A male ram. The lo yolda who can't bear children. So the isha is an islandess. Duchronis lo yolda, like a ram who can't bear children. That's how she gets her name. Okay, so in conclusion, we have the ksuba payments upon gerushin, upon misa. So the husband or his yerushim have to pay the isha her ksuba payments. How much is involved? Well, it depends. If she's a besula, upon marriage she was a besula, then it's 200 zuz. According to Rabban Shimon Gamliel, tzechiv min atira, based on the pasuk kemoyer hapsulos. Whereas according to the other shitas from the Rabbanon, all agree, if she married as a non-besula, it's only 100 zuz, and it's only midrabbanon. In fact, that's how she gets the name Almana, Al Shem V'Mana. We had several stories in the Gemara where they didn't discover any dam upon their first interaction. That created a concern, but the Gemara tells us there can be many reasons for lack of dam, and not necessarily concerning. Well, obviously the most simple concern is that she is a bu'ula. But perhaps she was not a bu'ula. She comes from the mishpachas durkati, who have no dam. Or maybe this fellow sidestepped the besulim, or perhaps dislodge the Pesulim, or as we had the story with the Shnei Ra'avain, the time of hunger, where the body didn't produce, there was no dam reaction, which was rectified by getting them back into shape. We learned about the meaning of Almana. We learned about the qualities of rain, the various functions of the Mizbeach, and how great dates are. All the best to you and much hatzlach.